What do you do when the person you loved most disappears without a word, leaving you with silence that speaks louder than love itself? This story takes you through loss, healing, and the power of learning English to rebuild a broken heart. The letter that never arrived. Have you ever waited for someone who never showed up, not just to a place, but to your life? That kind of silence doesn't make noise, yet it screams inside you. This story begins in a small town in Denmark, on the coldest day of the year, when a woman named Freja was supposed to marry the man she thought would never leave her. But he did. The church bells rang. Guests filled the wooden benches. The flowers trembled slightly under the northern wind. Freja stood in her white dress, holding her breath. 1 minute, 2, 10, until the air around her felt heavier than her own heart. He didn't come. He didn't call. He didn't say goodbye. That night, she sat by the window of her small apartment in Odense, still wearing her wedding dress. People said she looked like a ghost staring at the mailbox. Days turned into weeks, and the mailbox became her only hope. Maybe he sent a letter, she whispered every morning, as if the words could summon it into existence, but the letter never arrived. The world, however, kept moving. The buses still ran. The baker still sold rye bread. The sea outside the town still breathed in and out like nothing had happened. And that's the strange part of heartbreak. The universe doesn't stop for you. It just watches you fall apart. Quietly, Freja started writing small sentences in English to distract herself. He is gone. I am here. The sun still rises. She spoke them out loud, slowly, almost like prayers. Her voice trembled, but the language gave her rhythm, a tiny structure to hold the chaos together. Sometimes, that's how healing begins. Not with answers, not with closure, but with a few slow, shaky words whispered into the silence. The quiet town of Odense. Odense isn't a loud city. It whispers. The streets are narrow, the houses wear soft colors, and the air smells like rain and coffee. It's the kind of town where people greet each other with polite smiles, but also where everyone quietly knows everyone else's story. Especially Freja's. They called it the wedding without a groom. Some said it softly, out of pity. Others said it like gossip, just to fill the silence of small-town mornings. Every time Freja walked to the local bakery, she could feel their eyes, not cruel, just curious. In a place as small as Odense, heartbreak becomes public property. Freja started avoiding the usual streets. She took longer paths, passing by the old harbor where the seagulls screamed louder than people. Sometimes she stopped by the frozen canal, watching her reflection blur and twist under the icy surface. Maybe that's who I am now, she thought, someone who waits in silence. But even in this quiet Danish town, life had its rhythms. Children still biked to school, old men still read newspapers at the same cafe window, and the bells of St. Nud's Church still rang every Sunday. The same bells that once played for her wedding. To practice English, Freja began narrating her own life out loud during walks. This is a small town. These people are kind. I am okay. The words felt strange at first, like stones in her mouth. But slowly, they softened. Speaking English became a small secret between her and herself, a language that didn't carry memories of him. In a town that remembered too much, she chose to rebuild her story in a new tongue. The days after the silence. The days after he disappeared felt like standing in an empty room where time forgot to move. Freja would wake up before sunrise, not because she wanted to, but because sleep no longer felt safe. Every night, her mind replayed the same question: why didn't he come? In Odense, people tried to be kind. The woman at the bakery gave her extra pastries she didn't need. The neighbor smiled too brightly when they met in the stairwell. But kindness sometimes hurts more than cruelty. It reminds you that others can move on, while you're still stuck in the same sentence. Freja's silence was heavy. It filled the corners of her small apartment. She would turn on the radio just to drown out her thoughts, but even the songs seemed to echo her pain. One evening, she heard a song in English with the lyrics, "Some letters never find their way." It felt like the singer had read her heart. So she began to write again, short sentences in English, because Danish felt too close, too personal. I feel sad. I am learning. I want peace. Every word became a small act of resistance against her sadness. When she spoke them out loud, her voice trembled at first, but over time, she noticed something new. Her pronunciation got better, and her heart got lighter. Scientists say that speaking a new language can change how you process emotions. It gives your brain distance, like stepping out of the storm to watch it from afar. Freja didn't know that, but she felt it. English became her safe space, a small window of clarity in a fog of grief. The silence didn't disappear, but she learned how to walk through it. One word, one breath, one tiny English sentence at a time. The walk to the sea. One morning, after too many nights of staring at the ceiling, Freja put on her wool coat and decided to walk, anywhere, as long as it wasn't home. The sky was the color of steel, and the wind bit her cheeks as she made her way toward the sea. Denmark in winter can be brutally honest, quiet, gray, and beautiful in a way that hurts. The path was long and empty. Seagulls cried above her like broken violins. She stopped near the shore, watching the waves slap the rocks again and again, as if the ocean was trying to forget too. Maybe the sea understands, she whispered. Then, she started speaking out loud, not to anyone, just to herself. Today, I walk to the sea. The wind is cold. I am not afraid. The words came slowly, in English, clear and careful. Each sentence felt like a small heartbeat. For the first time, she wasn't trying to be fluent. She was trying to be alive. The rhythm of speaking matched the rhythm of the waves, soft, patient, unstoppable. A man walking his dog passed by and smiled at her. Practicing English, he asked kindly. She nodded, and he said, "Good. Keep talking. The sea listens." Then he walked away. Freja laughed for the first time in weeks. It sounded strange, raw, but real. She began describing everything she saw. The sand is white. The sky is heavy. The water moves. It wasn't just language practice anymore. It was therapy. a slow translation of her pain into something gentle and human. That morning by the sea, Freja realized something simple but powerful. You can't control who leaves you, but you can control what you say next. And sometimes, the first step to healing is just speaking. Learning to speak again. Back in her apartment, Freja began a daily routine. Every morning, she sat by the window with a notebook, writing sentences in English. Every evening, she read them out loud, slowly, carefully, like she was teaching her heart to beat again. I am strong. I can smile. I will live. Each word was a small rebellion against the shadow of him that still lingered. Learning to speak again wasn't just about English. It was about reclaiming her voice. Psychologists say that practicing a new language can help process emotions, creating a safe distance from trauma. For Freja, English was more than grammar or vocabulary. It was freedom. She also started small conversations with strangers in English at the cafe or at the bookstore. "Excuse me, do you know where the station is?" she would ask, her voice hesitant at first, then more confident. Each answer, each interaction, was a tiny bridge from loneliness to connection. Sometimes, she stumbled over words, mispronounced letters, or forgot simple phrases. And that was okay. The stumbles themselves became lessons, patience, humor, and self-compassion. Freja realized that speaking slowly, even imperfectly, mattered more than speaking perfectly. At night, she whispered stories into the darkness, stories of the town, of the sea, of herself. Speaking English transformed the silence from a cage into a canvas. Her heart, though still tender, felt the first sparks of life again. By the end of each week, Freja noticed a change. Her reflection in the mirror seemed less like a ghost and more like someone who could survive absence, disappointment, and heartbreak. Every word she spoke built courage, not just to talk, but to feel, to hope, and to live. The truth from a stranger. One chilly afternoon, Freja sat in her favorite cafe, the one with the big windows facing the cobblestone street. Steam rose from her cup of coffee, and the chatter around her felt like a gentle hum. That's when a stranger, an older man with kind eyes, sat at the table next to hers. He noticed her notebook, open and filled with English sentences. "Practicing English?" he asked, his voice warm. She nodded, smiling faintly. "It helps me think," she admitted. "And speak." The man listened quietly for a moment, then said something she didn't expect. "Do you know, sometimes people don't come back not because they don't care, but because life stops them in ways we don't understand?" Freja's heart skipped. She had assumed the worst, replaying every scenario where he had chosen to leave. But now, hearing this, a small crack opened in her certainty. "What do you mean?" she whispered. He shared a story, a friend who had left Denmark suddenly, not out of choice but because of family tragedy. "He never stopped thinking about her," the man said. But the world had other plans. Freja realized she had been holding on to an imagined betrayal more than reality. She could see now that unfinished love didn't always mean failure. Sometimes it meant life had its own timing, and her healing was the only thing she could control. Speaking English aloud, she repeated the stranger's words to herself. Sometimes life has other plans. Unfinished love is not the end. Each repetition made the truth softer, lighter, almost like a gentle hand on her shoulder. For the first time in months, she felt a cautious hope, the kind that didn't demand answers, only presence, understanding, and the courage to continue. The letter she finally wrote. One quiet evening, Freja sat at her small wooden desk, candlelight flickering across the pages of a blank notebook. She took a deep breath and picked up her pen. This time, she wasn't writing to him to expect a reply. She wasn't writing to beg, or to explain, or to plead. She was writing to let go. I never hated you, she wrote in careful English. I only wish things were different. But I cannot wait any longer. Each word felt heavy at first, like carrying a small stone in her chest. But as she continued, the weight began to shift, dissolving into the ink on the page. She described the wedding he never came to, the days of silence, the walks to the sea, and the tiny victories in learning to speak again. She wrote about fear, loneliness, and the moments she laughed despite the ache. She even wrote about the stranger at the cafe who had shared the truth. Writing in English gave her distance, a gentle lens to view her own life without being trapped by the past. When the letter was done, she read it aloud, slowly, savoring each word. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I am free. Her voice trembled, but in that trembling, there was strength. The act of speaking, English words flowing through her lips, became a ritual of healing. She didn't need to send the letter. Its purpose was not to reach him, but to reach herself. The night was still. The candle burned low. Outside, the wind whispered against the window, carrying the sound of distant waves. And Freja felt lighter than she had in months. She had finally told her story, spoken her truth, and reclaimed her heart, one careful, deliberate word at a time. The wedding of the heart. The day finally came when Freja didn't wake up expecting absence, didn't check the mailbox, and didn't imagine what could have been. Instead, she woke up and made herself a cup of tea, sitting by the window as sunlight spilled over the rooftops of Odense. The town still whispered, but now she only heard curiosity, not pity. She walked through the streets slowly, speaking English softly to herself. I am happy. I am enough. I am alive. Each phrase was a small celebration, a private wedding between her heart and her own life. She realized that love doesn't always need another person to exist. Sometimes, it begins within. At the cafe, she chatted with strangers, laughed at small jokes, and even helped a tourist find the train station. English had become more than a language. It was her bridge to the world, her proof that she could express, connect, and feel again. By the harbor, she watched the waves and whispered one last phrase she had learned to treasure. I can move forward. The ocean carried her words, the wind scattered them gently, and she felt the final weight of the past lift from her shoulders. Freja understood now that a wedding isn't just a ceremony with guests or a dress. It can be quiet, personal, and invisible, a promise to oneself to love, speak, and live fully. She had walked through heartbreak, learned patience, rebuilt her voice, and healed. In that slow, deliberate English, she found freedom.